So guys, this is very interesting news, and Manny Pacquiao mentioned this, and I actually dismissed this fight a couple of days ago, and I said, nah. But Manny Pacquiao's actually made this fight possible, and I was quite surprised that he is interested, but I can see why he isn't interested. Manny Pacquiao's had an ambition, or a lot of his fans have said that they want to see him become undisputed, and it looks like it'll be very difficult for him to do that at welterweight. However, there is a so-called undisputed champion at 140 by the name of Josh Taylor. And he was asked, Manny Pacquiao was asked about that fight, and he said that'll be good. Now, I don't know how much desire Manny Pacquiao, because, you know, Canelo looks to have secured his undisputed fight. And that's something that Manny Pacquiao hasn't achieved in the sport of boxing, becoming undisputed. How much desire does he still have? Because I think some people were saying that he had aspirations of becoming undisputed at welterweight, but it looks like the politics are going to get in the way. Manny Pacquiao at 140 could be one. He just needs to have one fight, and that's against Josh Taylor. Manny Pacquiao has expressed his interest of even fighting in the UK. A fight with Manny Pacquiao and Josh Taylor would be fairly big here, because Josh Taylor is an undisputed champion. I'm not saying it'd be massive, and it would be nowhere near as big, especially at the stage where Manny's at. It would be nowhere near as big as what the fight with a prime Amir Khan would have been. That would have been way bigger, because Khan's a bigger name in the UK than Josh Taylor. He's got a bigger profile, known by a lot more people. So that fight would have been massive. So I don't know why that fight didn't come off, you know. And I think that fight would have been bigger out of the UK. I think that fight commercially and financially, probably in Saudi Arabia, would have been massive. I think both guys could have made a huge amount of money. Unfortunately, now Amir's past his prime, and if Pacquiao still wants legacy fights, he doesn't want exhibition type fights. Taylor's a very, very credible fight. And it's not the fact that Taylor's not going to appeal to Pacquiao financially. It's the fact that Pacquiao said that he still wants to fight in the UK, and Taylor's an undisputed champion. So that fight makes a lot of sense for Pacquiao. You know, because although, like I said, I don't think financially the fight would be as lucrative, I'm actually wrong, because Manny Pacquiao might look at Taylor and think he's an undisputed champion. I want to become undisputed. And he might look to take that challenge. So I think there might be legs there. Although I initially dismissed it, the Manny Pacquiao, Josh Taylor fight, I actually think there is a possibility that could be an option, because Manny Pacquiao might want to finish his career as an undisputed champion, whether it's at 140. Manny Pacquiao did win a world title at 140. I think he beat Ricky Hatton, but he didn't have, I don't think that was the only fight he had at 140. He didn't really spend a long time at 140, but we all know he can make 140. That won't be a problem for him to make 140, because we all know Manny Pacquiao has to have X amount of meals to make welterweight. And we know he's not a big welterweight, so he could easily go down to 140, and he'd make that comfortably as well. You know, Manny Pacquiao could probably make 135 in a lot of people's, but 140 would be easy for him. And that would be an opportunity for Manny Pacquiao to, you know, to create history. But also, it would be an opportunity for Josh Taylor to take his profile and legacy to another level. Because imagine after what Josh Taylor's done, if he was to get a Manny Pacquiao fight and he was to beat him, right? What would that do for his legacy? Now, let's see how Manny Pacquiao gets on with Ugas. But if it's the same Manny Pacquiao that fought Keith Thurman, I would favor him to beat Josh Taylor, even at this stage. I think Manny Pacquiao's too skilled, too fast, and great. But again, we don't know what Manny Pacquiao's got left. And like I said, let's see how he looks against Ugas. Because if he gets beat, then that's it. You know, that's probably it then. But if he looks good, then a Josh Taylor fight is definitely a fight. Although I don't think that will be at the top of his list. And I think a Crawford and Spence fight, because if he beats Josh Taylor, I don't think that does as much for it. I don't think that does much for his legacy. Now, in terms of becoming undisputed, he can say, yes, I was undisputed. But in terms of a legacy name on his resume, I don't really think Josh Taylor's that compared to Crawford or Spence. I think Crawford and Spence are viewed in the world of boxing as much better fighters than Josh Taylor. So by him beating Spence or Crawford, it does a lot more for his legacy. Now, for me, Taylor's a much more winnable fight. And like I said, if he wants to be undisputed, I think he beats... Personally, I would still favour him to beat Taylor. Just because of the fact that, to be honest with you, Manny Pacquiao has been dealing with welterweights for a long time now. Again, we have to view Manny as a fight-to-fight basis, because we don't know when Father Time's going to catch up. But I'll be honest with you, I still think that he'll beat Ugas on Saturday, and I think that if he was to fight someone like Josh Taylor at 140, I would favour him in that one as well. But again, it all depends on how he looks in that fight on Saturday. Because if we're going off his last fight against Thurman, for me that version beats Taylor. If he was good enough to beat Thurman, who I believe would beat Taylor, right? And even that version that fought Pacquiao would beat Taylor, then I think Manny Pacquiao would definitely beat Taylor. So, but again, if Manny Pacquiao has diminished, then Taylor might be able to win that fight. And imagine if Taylor was to win that fight, what that would do for his legacy. Taylor's a very good fighter. But again, it just depends on where Manny's at, because I think we'll all agree that a prime Manny Pacquiao would walk through Taylor, you know? But it's not a prime Manny Pacquiao. I mean, we don't know, is he at 70%? Is he at 80% of what he was? Is he at 40%, 50%? Where is Manny Pacquiao at? We don't know. Against Thurman, how good was that? I still think that was a diminished Manny Pacquiao. That wasn't the best Manny Pacquiao, but yet it's still good enough to beat Keith Thurman, right? But how far, now remember that was 2 years ago, so, and 2 years of inactivity. So how far has he now diminished since then? Because let's not forget, when you get 40 to 42 is old, like you're getting older, and 40 is already old in the sport of boxing. 42 is even older. So how much more has he diminished since then? You know, all of these things have, it's going to be, if he looks sensational against Ugas and absolutely destroys him, then you know, and even now against Spence has suffered an eye injury. Is Spence going to be the same? Does Spence beat Pacquiao right now? Pacquiao may fancy that fight now even more. The fact that he suffered an injury, Pacquiao may think, I've got even great. Like, I personally think the Taylor fight is definitely a possibility. I wouldn't be surprised, because they'd be able to build that fight here in the UK, and I think that'd be able to sell out it'd be able to sell out a stadium in Scotland. I don't think Manny will fight in Scotland. I think it'll probably have to be somewhere in London. But again, I don't know how big that fight is. And I don't think financially, with the other options that he'll have on the table, like Crawford and Spence, which are bigger fights, which mean a lot more for his legacy, because like I said, they're better fighters than Taylor. Or at this point, they're viewed as better fighters. You know, pound for pound, both of them are probably higher than Taylor. They're both viewed as better fighters than Taylor. So it just makes a lot more sense for Pacquiao to probably fight one of them two, because like I said, Pacquiao's looking for a legacy fights. But if neither Spence or Crawford can happen, then I think Taylor might be a front runner, because like I said to you, Manny, he may be a front runner anyway, because Taylor's expressed the interest of fighting Manny Pacquiao. Taylor wants to fight Manny Pacquiao as well. And he's an undisputed champion. Let's not forget, he's an undisputed champion. So Manny Pacquiao, if Taylor was an undisputed champion, he wouldn't be interested in Josh Taylor. But because Josh Taylor's an undisputed champion, that's a pull. You know, that's a pull, because Manny Pacquiao may want to leave the sport as an undisputed champion. What weight class won't matter to him. He may just want to leave the sport. And that's why the Josh Taylor fight makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense for Manny. And I won't be surprised if that fight does come off now. I actually think, before I was thinking, nah, no chance. I won't be surprised now, if with listening to what Manny had to say about it, that yeah, that'll be good. You know, when he was asked about Taylor, I definitely think that that fight could happen. It's sad that, you know, he didn't fight. I think a fight in their primes against Brook or Khan would have been bigger than the Taylor fight, because like I said, I think they're bigger stars in the UK than Josh Taylor, but Josh Taylor's a very good fighter. And the Khan fight would have been massive in his prime against Pacquiao. That would have been a huge fight. You know, no British fighter would have been able to top that in terms of how big that would have been. I think that could have easily sold out Wembley, Khan Pacquiao in their prime, like 2014-15 Khan and Pacquiao would have sold out Wembley without question. You know, that would have been massive. But unfortunately, the fights didn't happen. But now, if we're looking at Taylor, he's a credible opponent, man. He's a credible opponent. And that could, I won't say that won't fill out Wembley, especially Pacquiao being at the age he's at. And Taylor not really being a crossover star in the UK. That's not filling out Wembley. But it could fill out a stadium, maybe 20, 30,000. A small stadium. Yeah, I think it could. I think it could. I think it could do numbers. Again, I don't know how big it would be on pay-per-view. I'm not sure. Again, it won't. Would it be massive on pay-per-view? I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I think Taylor's just not well. He's not been promoted that great here. Not many people know who he is. He doesn't appeal to the casuals, which is a shame because he's a great fighter, undisputed champion. But you know, he hasn't got the publicity that he probably deserves. But yeah, I don't think any of us would mind the fight. I think it'd be a good fight. But I do think that there's a possibility this may come off. And if it does come off, Taylor's had it off because he's going to get the biggest payday of his career and he's going to get opportunity to fight a legend and a faded legend at that. So if he beats him, imagine where takes his legacy. Because remember, Taylor's already got a legacy now. He's undisputed. He's beaten some very good fighters. By beating Manny Pacquiao would put him on another level. And not just that, you've got to look at it from a profile point of view. It'd take Taylor to another level. You know, so yeah, I don't think that will be Manny's first option. But if the Crawford and Spence fight can't be made, I do think that Taylor has a legitimate shout of, you know, fighting Manny Pacquiao or getting the fight if Manny Pacquiao decides to fight on. Because remember, it'll be an opportunity for Manny Pacquiao to become undisputed at 140 pounds. And that would be a too good opportunity to turn down because, again, even though, like I said, legacy-wise, by him fighting and beating Crawford or Spence does a lot more for his legacy because those two fighters are viewed greater than Josh Taylor. However, Josh Taylor's an undisputed champion, so Pacquiao can lead the sport as an undisputed champion. So that there is a big carrot for Pacquiao to fight Josh Taylor. So that's why I think Josh Taylor's also in great position. That's why I think Josh Taylor should hang about at 140, not just jump to welterweight. Because if he jumps to welterweight, vacates his belts, then the fight against the fight with Manny Pacquiao is not going to happen because Manny's not going to want to fight Josh Taylor at 147 pounds. It don't mean anything. If he's going to fight Josh Taylor, it's going to be for all the titles at 140 pounds. You know, so will that fight happen? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it may be behind Spence and Crawford. But if those fights don't happen, Taylor's got a legitimate shout of a fight against Pacquiao. And I was dismissive of that fight a couple of days back. But now after Pacquiao saying that he's interested, that could well happen. But leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.